Okay, I want to talk about something that I think is way more important to the conversation around business, life success, and financial success, and doesn't get talked about as often as things like techniques to become more successful or make more money, etc. But it's actually way more important. We just never talk about it because it's not as popular and sexy to talk about. This question is inspired because of a question on my Patreon Mastermind Discord which reads by Dismoto, which reads, do you plan on making a video or have you thought about the mental strain on people wanting to move from one stage of success to the next? I'm in the late and early game, but struggle to move to mid game because I really don't know if I should personally target in order to do so. I am like a dog seeing 1,000 squirrels, but chasing each one gets me nowhere. So it's honestly taking a heavy toll on my mental health. So what he's referring to when he refers to the stages is a graph that I made in a previous video describing different levels of success, starting with the start. We're not going to go over it here because you can watch that video. And if you aren't a subscriber to Patreon for $5, you can just get in and watch that video. But the gist of it is here, explaining these different stages. We're at the start. You're trading time for money and you kind of work through stages and you get to becoming a higher income earner. Eventually you escape earning income from a job and you go into building your own financial success and assets out. So what he is saying is that he's having a problem where he's probably in the early game. So he's saying that he has some kind of middle to high income earning job, trying to transition to a point where he can save enough money to probably leave that job, but that it's an enormous mental toll to do so, to increase those stages and to increase your financial success at that level. Okay, so we don't talk enough about making active decisions around success and setting goal points. And I'm going to tell you in this talk in a few minutes, one of the most important things I think we need to define about how to actually become successful. And so stay tuned for that. But making active decisions around success and setting goal points, what do I mean? So the first thing you have to do before you set out for anything is to get real objective about what you want to accomplish financially and why. Because you have to understand every further level of financial success is going to impart larger hardship on your life, relationships, family, and personal psyche. Okay, so let's break up an idea around CEOs and executives and people that are successful that many people don't understand. I am a person who both experiences this lifestyle as well as I meet dozens, if not hundreds of people that are also high functioning CEOs and executives or own businesses. And the stereotype, which I think comes from a middle income, sort of lower income level, because people don't get exposed to these types of people, is that you've got your fat, rich CEO that doesn't know what's going on. I've never met, not in my life, have I ever met a person at the head of a business that is functioning that way. They have always undergone an enormous amount of sacrifice and self-actualization to get there. So it is my belief that, not without exception, there are probably people that trust funded in, or you're always going to find exceptions to these rules. But the vast majority of people, to achieve greater levels of financial success, have had proportional sacrifice to that level. So you have to decide if you want that level of financial success, if you want to do that sacrifice. I'm going to talk a little bit about that. The more financial success you have, and the more success you have in general, the more responsibility you're going to have. Why? What is the fundamental rule there? Because if you are creating value, and creating value is how to make financial success happen, right? You have to create a product that people like, or create a service that people want or need. And then people will pay you to have that service or product. And then you're thus creating value. You can create value in tons of ways. And now in the digital economy, we can create value in all kinds of ways. You can create value without ever creating anything physical, right? You can get paid for just talking. I get paid for talking and other things, but I also create a service which people want. And that actually is a good example because the service that I create through my agency is proportionally way higher value to others, and so people pay much more than they'll pay for me talking, but I still do both. So every level of financial success is going to impart much harder hardship on your life. And the reason for this is because as you create this value and you create more and more value, people then decide to trust you with more responsibility. your customers, people that are part of your inner and outer circles all start to believe in you more, and so they trust you with more responsibility. Things come into your life that take on more responsibility, and this becomes a fundamental rule because as a person of value, the more you move up in the value that you provide, the more that you are trusted and really responsible for solving a lot of the world's problems, because most people don't want to solve the world's problems. So this is why you see a lot of people at the heads of major corporations like trying to make significant changes in things like climate change or hunger or large problems that the world has. In a way, these are sort of the only people that ought to make that can make those changes, right? Like not only just because of their actual accessibility and the funds that they have, but also just because of the reality that the vast majority of people just don't want to do that. They want to think about those problems or talk about them on Twitter with thoughts and prayers, but they don't want to actually do anything about it. They don't want to buy 9% of Twitter and actually join the board and actually do something about it, right? Or they can't. They just don't have the accessibility or haven't built the value to actually create that opportunity for themselves, right? That's fine. That's all different sort of things. This isn't a video about judging those people. It isn't a video about judging anybody. It's just a video about you personally deciding what you want to accomplish in your life, and then understanding the cost of that. That's where all of this begins. And then we're going to get into actually how to do it. But you have to understand that, like, at $100,000 a year in USD, right? I think this is achievable by the vast majority of people. And I actually think in the digital economy, it's going to be a little bit of a hot take, but in the digital economy, this is achievable for very low amounts of work. I'm talking maybe 4 to 6 hours a day. At the point we are at in the digital economy, if you learn the skills to build resources like information products or flipping products or selling a service or selling a product, you can, with automation, you can remove a lot of the work from that. I would say that the content side of my personal life it takes less than a few hours a day and produces more than $100,000 in income. Now, I have a business that produces much more, not personal income for me, but in terms of revenue for the company, and that takes all my time. But that's because I've decided to sacrifice at a higher level, which we'll talk about in a minute. So you can get to $100,000 a year with not too much sacrifice. One of the examples I like to use with this is 1,000 True Fans, which is if you have 1,000 people paying you $100 every year, right? You've just made $100,000, and that's like a pretty low amount of people that you monetize to get to that point. It's pretty achievable. So just figuring out how to do that, right? Whether it be through like entertainment, and again, there's just so many options now where you see like even esoteric things that were not possible before, like artists making money off of Spotify plays, right? There's all kinds of ways to do this, some of which we explore in the kind of content that I do. If you go to like $200,000 a year to $400,000 a year, this is again achievable, but sacrifice plays a part here. You're either going to have a pretty high-paying FANG job or something that's going to take a lot of your time and responsibility, or you're going to have a business or a service or a product that's going to take a lot of your time and responsibility. The lifestyle change from $200,000 to $400,000 a year compared to $100,000 a year is pretty massive, depending on your cost of living. And this, for the vast majority of people, like 99.9% of people, is where I think that you ought set your goal to end up. Now, the original question, which I'm going to post here real quick, just so you remember, this is a video about like mental barriers in business, is that this is a person that is struggling to move from a high earning income job to a place where they run their own business or have more freedom. I think what we're doing here is we're considering the income levels, but really we should be considering time, because each one of these things is a greater time sacrifice and a greater responsibility that you may not want to impart on your own life. So I'm going to kind of like talk about that a little bit more, right? Where just going to break down the last category, which is 1 million plus, and this is per year, right? At this point, you are sacrificing most other things. / life revolves around having the foundations to build this kind of income. So what do I mean by that? I mean, you might be taking a meditation class to clear your mind so that you have more executive focus. You might be taking a yoga class to get better in your body so that you're actually capable of like sustaining this. Your family is making great sacrifices, like your girlfriend or wife is like doesn't see you except on certain times during the weekend. You need to be very deliberate with your time. You're sacrificing like an enormous amount. You will have relationship problems if you're not absolutely perfect, right? This is a very, very difficult goal to achieve. So back to what I was just saying before, this is jumping around a little bit. The vast majority of people ending up at $200,000 to $400,000 is incredibly successful. And you can not only with intelligent spending live an incredible lifestyle, even in the United States, on that kind of money, but you can also save for the future, especially if you're starting early. Now, I say that because the prevailing mindset in the United States and in first world countries is that somehow $200,000 to $400,000 is like a low amount of money. But if you earn $400,000 in the United States, you are below the top 1%. You will not meet every 100 people that you meet. You will only meet like 0.5, half of a human that is actually at that level of income. So you are in a really rare category, and it's really important to understand why you're in that category. You're in that category because you're willing to make sacrifices that other people are not willing to make. So that sacrifice doesn't just include on your personal life and the cost of that. It also means that you are going to make sacrifices on a skill-based level, on a learning-based level, that you are willing to put your time into things that could very much fail and will fail, and then recover from those failures, which all takes a mental toll and is difficult mental hardship. So you have to set your mind to a goal that is you're really sure you want to hit, and be fully aware of the sacrifices you're going to have to make in order to get to that goal. So I had the goal of making $200,000 to $400,000 a year initially when I tried to sell my first company, and I more or less achieved that goal. I was actually happy there for a long period of time until even fairly recently. I wanted to go bigger because for my own reasons, for what it's worth, and this actually kind of comes to like the real important part that I'm going to talk about in a few minutes. I wanted to make a greater impact on the world, and I don't know how to do that except through finance. And when I say impact, I mean I want to solve some big problems in the world, particularly around education, that I want to help solve them. I wouldn't be so pretentious to say that I can solve them, but I want to help solve them. Okay, so that leads to the kind of second part of this. So if you have decided and understand the level of sacrifice you're going to make, you have to then disillusion yourself from all the social identity that's coming from Twitter, that's coming from entrepreneur lifestyle or wantrepreneur lifestyle, and realize that the vast majority of people that are clawing at you for success or talking about success are not themselves successful. They can't be, because if they were, then they wouldn't be part of the 0.05%. We know objectively that 0.5 in every 100 humans is going to be at $400K a year. This is the US, right? This is like not even other countries. So the number of people that you're going to run into there making $400,000 a year is unbelievably small. So all these people that are talking about this on Twitter and Instagram and living this like supposed lifestyle are not actually, right? They're in debt. They're miserable. The successful people that are in your life that you manage to like get in front of are probably going to tell you a message that's similar to mine, because they are cognizant of the sacrifice that you have to make to get to this level, and very aware that you ought not to. One of my favorite videos ever is a video from Elon when he's asked. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to find this. Elon Musk is talked. Okay, so this is like a hilarious video. You can watch this. It's right here. So this guy is like touring a factory for some kids, and the kids ask him like, "What is it like to start a business?"
I think it's very difficult.
I think I need to increase the volume here. I just want you to listen to this real quick, just to kind of get an idea of what I'm talking about from like real successful people and how they talk about this.
Difficult to start companies and quite painful. I think that's important to bear in mind. I don't know if that's probably not encouraging, but I mean, there's a friend of mine who's got a good phrase for doing a startup. It's like eating glass and staring into the abyss. So it's if you go into it expecting it's going to be just fun, you will be disappointed.
So if you listen to actual successful people talk about this, this is what you see. You like we're in our head so much with these like folks from Instagram. I love how this teacher is just like looking at his life like, holy, like this is not the answer I expect. Right? Because like, and again, that's because like again, people that are not operating at that level or near it have no concept of this. You're inundated by Twitter messages, by long threads from people on startups, by all of this like supposed progress, not realizing that to even achieve a moderate level of wealth and get out of debt is massively successful. And so you've set your expectations so high for your own success that is statistically improbable or impossible to achieve, that of course you are under great mental strain when you're trying to cross through these categories. And instead of reaching out for things in life that are important, like getting more time, like having more meaningful relationships, like self-improvement, like getting your head together about things, you are chasing these imaginary goals, literally imaginary. These numbers are imaginary zeros and ones in banks accounts, right? That you are chasing in order to get to something that the people that are telling you ought get to that are not even at themselves. That is your life, right? So of course you're fucking stressed because you have you have no way out of this prison that you've built for yourself. Whereas the real successful people are telling you what? Mind your time. Be aware that there is sacrifice in this kind of level of success. This is something that they gave their own life up for to do 100%, right? That's the real message. So if you actually become clear on that, then you may realize that you have a lot of different gears to turn in your life that are not like, oh my God, I need to be like a bazillionaire entrepreneur. And that is the modus operandi that I've chosen to operate with consciously, being completely aware, especially now, of the sacrifice that that entails. And the outcomes that have happened in my life from that are many failed relationships, very few friends, several hardships, nights at 4 a.m. in the office, walking back home numerous times, right? Like I can go on and on and on about that. And it's not amazing and fulfilling in this dream lifestyle. Like it's really hard. So that's the first thing to keep in mind, is like just to understand your stress at like a really mental level about trying to move through these sections, and that maybe you might want to reprioritize your focus into shit. Like maybe I don't need $1 million a year to be happy, because I look at all of these people that have $1 million a year and I don't have really objective examples of those people being happy. You look at people like Will Smith, who is an unbelievably successful and famous person, who is quivering in his chair at a mention of a mild joke about his wife. These are not happy people. Like we see this over and over. You know this intuitively. I don't have to tell you this, right? You know this. You know this. You know that most celebrities and most millionaires and people like that are not happy. They talk about their problems all the time. And so money and fame do not fix these things. We know this. We know this psychologically through the APA, showing that greater than $75,000 a year doesn't meaningfully increase happiness. We know this in news. But how many times do you have to be told that these fanciful ideas are not going to bring you what you want? They're not going to relieve your mental stress, and more financial stuff is not going to solve your problems. So what will? I'm going to tell you what will now. And this is the second part of this. I think one of the most common issues that people have is they focus on these income goals and numbers, but not actually solving a real problem in the world. So if you are trying to move from a early starter, like I earn $50,000 a year, I want to earn $250,000 a year, or whatever the hell the number is, you don't need to do anything besides figure out what problem you want to solve. And the scale of the problem that you solve will be proportional to the amount of income you make. It's the most important thing that someone is going to tell you about success. So much so that I will repeat what I just said and explain it. So if you decide to focus on large problems that create large amounts of value, there will be large incentives in terms of income and success attached to those problems. If you focus on smaller problems, which are more local, then you will have a proportional amount of success to that. You can still have great success. So for example, if the problem that you want to solve is there's not enough quality Mexican food in my area, and you start a restaurant. When you solve that problem, you will be rewarded proportional to the scale of that problem. There are no bad problems, and there are no and problems are equal, at least as far as I'm concerned, in terms of their solutions. So if you say this community doesn't have access to enough healthy food, and then you decide to solve that problem, that could be a problem that might have a several $1,000,000 at the end of it proportional to its value. Cool, right? If you try to solve a global problem like Americans, or a national problem, like Americans don't have enough shopping options for X, right? Then you might build Amazon, and now you've got a $1 trillion solution. So the problem that you set out to fix, and it's my belief that both on a spiritual and a financial level, every human being should set out to solve a problem, because we lack a lot of purpose and direction in our life, and going for a number will not feel to you when you hit that number like achievement that is making you happy. But what will feel like that is if you can empirically see how you've helped solve a problem. And then ideally see the results of that. So in a philanthropic sense, if you invest into something simple like feeding a community, and you see the people eating as a result of something you've created, that is infinitely more value to you as a human being and will stay with you as a memory than the deposit into your bank account as a result of doing anything else. And you don't have to, it's not such a romantic idea that you have to like feed hungry families. It's a really easy allegory. But you could do other things. You could, like, in the same exact way as, like, if you have a grocery store, like a physical place where people are buying things, and you can go to it and it exists, again, infinitely more rewarding. And we can go down to like even like a smaller level. It doesn't have to be that dramatic. Again, like there are different levels, right? Requiring different levels of sacrifice. You could build a desk for somebody, and you know that somebody is using that desk right now. Or you could build a chair and somebody's sitting in that chair. And maybe you want to build that chair as perfectly as that chair can be built. That's rewarding in a different way than seeing numbers on a screen. So what has happened in society now is we've divorced ourselves from this idea of like really creating something, because everything is so vague and digital that when you don't directly see the value that you create. So even for someone like me, where I do these kinds of videos, I don't have a really good idea of like who sees them or like what kind of value it provides. I can read comments and see the number of views on a video, but I don't like really understand the impact that it's making on a person's like life. Like that's happening because I'm removed from the process of actually creating something. But if I created things locally and saw people using them, there's a guy in Lake Tahoe, in a place I used to live. He built these bears. He'd carve them. Some of them were big. They're like 4 or 5 feet tall. They're like wooden bears. You take a tree, carve the bear, really elaborate bears. I just loved his life because he'd go place these bears at restaurants and give them to people, and you drive all around, you see these little bears that he made. I think there's so much fulfillment in that because like you're physically connected to the thing that you're creating. You're physically connected to the problem you're solving, which again, see, like problems don't have to be romantic, like, oh, we got to feed hungry families or whatever. That's really noble and great, but it could be, I don't know, there's not enough bears, not enough wooden bears around. We got to build more, all right? Whatever problem you want to solve. So you have to set out, if you want to really be mentally stable and fulfilled, you have to set out by saying, what problem do I really want to solve? What am I passionate about? And if you want to know how to find that problem to solve, well, that should be really easy, right? You already consume tons and tons of negative information per day. I don't think anybody watching this video needs a guide or tutorial by Devin Nash on how to find negative stuff to listen to, right? There should be no end to it, okay? There should be absolutely no end to it. So why not pick out one of those problems and decide that you want to solve it, and decide that instead of being this ADHD mess that is listening to 100 things a day, which we all are, that you are going to focus and solve one single problem. And then if you feel like, which is like a fulfillment thing in yourself, that you've solved that problem, then you can solve the next problem. And maybe that problem that you solve, second problem, is a bigger problem. And then by the time you're on your 4th or 5th problem, maybe you're solving something of great significance to you and your community and the people, maybe even nationally or globally at a level. And I think if every human being thought like that, instead of shooting for these revenue goals that don't mean anything, we would all be a lot happier. And I think the dude that asked this question originally is running into that problem where there's 500 different things to do. And, I ought to be a content creator. Well, I got to post on Twitter also. Well, I should probably help my mom. And, I got to do some grocery store stuff. And I really got to work out, like all this stuff, right? Like just focus on solving a problem. So why did I get into esports? I got into esports because I wanted to solve the problem that players were really not a couple of things. Players were not really, how do I say this? Like physically, mentally, and spiritually taken care of. It's basically like you just put them in a chair and they play video games for 12 hours, and hopefully they're good enough that they can win like a League of Legends tournament. And nowadays, like we have support staff, we have like we have like visualization seminars and meditation, all kinds of stuff changed in that. It really, I feel like that problem is largely solved, and for that reason and others, I left esports. So now in the agency world, when I started Novo, I started this because I'm really tired of all the predatory business practices in the agency world. I really hate that agencies abuse influencers and influencers abuse brands by bad calls to action. And I think that sucks and that somebody should mediate that process and make it better. So I decided to do that. I'd never have any revenue goals. I wasn't like, wow, starting an agency is going to make me millions of dollars. I don't care. Like, no more than I said going into esports is going to make me millions of dollars. No more than I said in 2012 when I started broadcasting that broadcast is going to make millions of dollars, right? I started, you know why I started broadcasting? Like streaming on Twitch TV? It's the stupidest reason ever. Like just an example of like a low quality problem, but one that got me to where I am today. I did it because I felt that nobody on League of Legends was positive. That's really why I started my broadcast. Like I'm dead serious. Like people that know me long enough will verify this. Maybe in the comments or something that I actually did this. That the reason why I started broadcasting was because there just wasn't a lot of positive people in League of Legends, and it bothered the hell out of me. And I wanted to like create a positive community around League of Legends. Like it was so toxic, right? I came from Heroes of New Earth, which was even more toxic than that, if you can believe it. And I was like, man, League of Legends shouldn't be the same way. We should make it more positive. So I started a stream that was about positivity and jungling and teaching jungling and positivity. And lo and behold, like Riot thought that was so cool that they featured it on the client. And then my stream was on the client. And then all of a sudden, like, oh my God, I've got like a career. Like, well, this is nuts, right? So it's like an example that like you don't have to start off with like, oh, like Devin Nash trying to solve world hunger. Like, no, I started off with like super dumb problems. Like in a way, like the problem I'm trying to solve now is dumb. Like the agency world is just like an aspect of marketing that I'm passionate about. I'm not like saving children, like I'm just solving a problem that I want to solve. And then inadvertently all the other stuff falls into place. So hard to believe because everybody's telling you to like go for these like revenue goals and go for everything. But like really to create value, you just start trying to solve a problem. And then if you start solving that problem, then the other stuff will fall into place. I promise it will. I know that's like the kind of subjective leap that a lot of people have to make in their head, where you probably don't see the one-to-one, where it's like, okay, I'm solving this problem, but like nothing else is falling into place. Like, well, then that might be the point where you look at like techniques and quantitative ways to like actually increase your income around solving that problem or monetizing that. Maybe at that point you need to take like a course that says, okay, here's how to like better monetize this. Like maybe while solving this problem, I can create an info product around it, right? That might be an option. Okay, so if I think that way, then like I like most people are reversing it. They're consuming all this content about how to make more income and like how to build a better business and everything, but they don't like have a problem they're solving. And so that stuff is getting wasted. You might be spending hours of your time on like self-improvement stuff that you're not actually doing. And at the same then you're basically just procrastinating. You're gaining a dopamine hit for something that you're not even doing. Whereas if you reverse it, you say, okay, solve a problem and then consume the necessary type of content around how to better solve that problem and add more value within that context, you will feel better. And that's how I think you get over these like really big mental blocks and stress in business. It's a two-part formula discussed in this video. Like number one, you need to understand the level of success that you want to achieve and why you want to achieve it and what the sacrifice entails. within that, right? So 1 and 3 bullet points. And then number 2, once you do understand that's a level of sacrifice, you need to understand what problem you want to solve. So if you put those 2 things together, I think you'll be really impressed with how much more mentally stable you are in the achievement of these goals, regardless of the decision that you made and the level that you want to reach. You are still going to encounter hardship, and hardship is going to again be proportional to the level of success you've decided to try to create, where greater levels of success will require greater levels of hardship as like just a scale, like a hockey stick, right? But if you know that that's your direction and you know you're trying to solve a problem, you'll feel a lot better about doing it at any level. I just think that most people are focusing on the wrong things. But what do you think? Leave a comment, tell me, and hopefully this video was not just me rambling and meaningful to somebody. Because again, digital removal, I'm not sure like how much impact I have. And if it was, you can tell me because you can comment and I'll read it. Thanks. I hope you subscribe and watch this for more stuff like this. So thank you for coming out for this. See you next time.